Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time to view my presentation. I must start with wishing you all a happy St. Patrick's Day from Ireland, and I'm guessing that the weather is much warmer there for St. Patrick's Day than it is here. So my name is Lhara Mullins and I'm a lecturer at the National University of Ireland in Galway. And the title of my presentation is The Impact of Loneliness on Home Care Provision in Ireland. So just to give a little bit of context and background to discuss what exactly is home care and what does this mean. So home care in Ireland is a visiting service which enables older people to remain aging in place and stay in their own homes and communities as they age. So the idea is that it prevents them from needing to move into a nursing home or a long-term stay facility. However, the tasks of home care are very limited to include personal care. So this would be help with washing and dressing and personal hygiene and essential domestic tasks. So these would be only the tasks that are very necessary, such as lighting a fire or maybe cooking a meal for the person. Home care has been provided by the state in Ireland through the Health Service Executive since the 1970s, and before that it was provided by voluntary agencies largely run by the Catholic Church. However, now as of 2022, home care in Ireland is a thriving quasi-market system that has been profoundly impacted by neoliberalism. So this is definitely a high money-making market in Ireland, and we have hundreds of private home care companies, and the state outsources home care hours to these different private primary home care centres throughout the country. So the private providers bid for contracts from the state. So now we have a system where the state and the private providers both provide care in the home to older people. Home care is largely undertaken and provided by women. So there are some men that deliver home care in Ireland and internationally, but it's largely undertaken by women, and home care workers themselves are a marginalised and hard to reach group. Very notable for Ireland is that we have no legislation or regulation for the home care sector in Ireland. So there is absolutely no minimum standards of care and no accountability from a regulatory perspective governing the care of older people in the home. And also to note is that the home care sector in Ireland is largely under research to date, and there's very much research that has been undertaken on this topic so far. So my research question was older people and home care in Ireland, how much do we care? And the aim of this research was to examine the current delivery of home care for older people in Ireland from both their experiences and the experiences of home care workers. And the key objectives were to ascertain the views of older people around what they consider positive or negative experiences of home care based on their individual perspectives, and also then explore the home care workers' experiences of delivering home care and examine the factors which they think impacts this. So the methodology that I employed was qualitative. However, phase one, which was interviews with older people, initially the uptake was very low. So in an effort to generate interest and demystify the research process, I employed focus groups with older people. Now, these focus groups were of older people who were active in the community as opposed to older people who were necessarily in receipt of home care. So this worked really well, and I had 2 focus groups with 15 participants in total. And this actually helped with snowball sampling, and I was able to interview 16 older people, 14 of whom were in receipt of home care and 2 of whom were family members of older people in receipt of home care. And then phase 2 was interviews with home care workers, and I undertook 20 interviews with home care workers. So the findings, it wasn't what I expected to find at all. The findings were quite difficult to read through. So loneliness seems to be a chronic issue that older people are affected by in Ireland, who are in receipt of home care. So this was something that the home care workers directly identified as the primary need of many of the older people who they visited. It was alluded to by older people, but there was some hesitation in openly disclosing a feeling of loneliness. So it was alluded to by older people and maybe not so directly identified as their primary need. However, findings suggest that some older people do seek home care in an effort to address their unmet need for social contact. And also what I found was that many home care workers provide additional hours and tasks, undocumented and unpaid. So some home care workers might make themselves available in the evenings and at weekends. They might provide their contact information to the older person if they know that they don't have anybody else who's going to come and see them. And many of the home care workers would stay longer than the time that they're being paid for, simply because the older person is on their own and they don't want to leave them. So just some of the voices of participants. So one older person said, "I'm not abandoned, but at the same time, it's nice to have someone you can talk to regularly." And another said, "I was here all day and you would be waiting for someone to come." While another older person said that it sort of gives you a quality of life. And then one older person said, "Well, 1 week nobody came at all. I mean, I was watching the door." But the quote that stands out to me the most came from a home care worker. She was with an older person who was having an ambulance come and take them to the hospital. And they said next of kin. And he said, "No one. Absolutely no one." So this quote probably stayed with me the most out of all of the quotes throughout the research process. It just really struck me that this older person had absolutely no one. So in discussing the findings, there's a stigma around loneliness, and this is why some older people are finding it really difficult to self-disclose that they're lonely, and to access services. You need to self-disclose that you're lonely if you want to access services which are aimed at increasing social contact. Ageism in Irish society within policy and legislation is also notable. So compared to other groups that may have potentially vulnerable members, the needs of older people are not sufficiently addressed within the policy and legislation in Ireland. And then home care workers are profoundly under-recognised and underappreciated for the work that they do. They make such a substantial difference to the lives of the older people that they provide care to. Some absolutely uplift the worlds of the older people that they go to, and it's something that they look forward to every day, their home care worker coming to see them. And because they genuinely care, they genuinely want to provide care to the older people that they visit. So in conclusion, we need to address the social needs of older people. So for example, social prescribing, such as in the UK, and more widely available and established visiting service, because this will reduce the need for home care services. We need to undertake further research to ascertain nationally the impact of the home care service, and we need to prioritise the legislation and regulation of home care services. This needs to be done ASAP. Thank you very much, and I will be available for questions.